Hello everybody! JGC Anime here, and today we're here to review Spy Classroom Season 2, or Spy Kyoshitsu Second Season. I don't know if I said that right, but we're just gonna roll with it. So, what is the story behind this second season of Spy Classroom? Basically, it takes place right after the end of Season 1, and just kind of goes off from there, giving us a bit more insight to what went on behind the scenes, and then caught us up to where we are now in the story, where some new things have appeared for the spies to try and figure out, where this time we focus on the character of Annette, who runs into her mother, who ends up setting up the whole storyline going forward. And yeah, that's probably not the best description, but we're just gonna roll with it. So, in terms of spoiler-free thoughts, I honestly didn't enjoy this season that much. I enjoyed the first season fine. Like, after we got through the first 3 painful episodes, the rest of the season was fun. I had a good time. Overall, I really enjoyed myself and liked where the story was going and all the characters and stuff like that. It was fun. I had a great time. Season 2, however, kind of falls flat for me, as it has multiple moments where things are super predictable, super obvious. It's very clear what they're trying to do from the get-go. And while there are some nice twists here and there that I don't see coming, there are just a lot of flaws in this storyline, as I feel like I'm just bored half the time. Like, rather than feeling all ecstatic about, like, yeah, spy stuff, this is awesome, instead I think, oh, spy stuff, great, okay. Like, for some reason, I just didn't really care much for the spy stuff in this show at all. In fact, more often than not, I kind of enjoyed the filler episodes, which I guess they're not technically filler, but they are kind of. There are some episodes that are literally just random stuff happening, and I actually enjoyed those more because they were just fun. I was enjoying myself while watching those. And the sad part is, that doesn't take up most of the season. Like, out of the full 12 episode season, I can only think of like 4 episodes at most that I actually could say, yeah, I had a good time with. Which, you know, for a 12 episode season, that's not exactly a great number. It's just that I found myself not just feeling like everything was super predictable, but a lot of the time it was just really dull. Like, I was watching, and rather than thinking, oh man, this sure is exciting, I'm enjoying myself, instead I'm thinking, is the episode over yet? Can we leave? Can I go? Please, I'm bored. Like, I just never really got into it almost ever. The only times I ever did were those episodes I mentioned, where they were actually kind of fun. I actually enjoyed them. But the good episodes are so far and few between, and it's kind of frustrating to me, as I really did want to enjoy this season, since, as I mentioned before, I enjoyed season 1. After we got past the first painful episodes, just the first 3 episodes which weren't the best, the rest of the season was fun. I enjoyed myself. I had a good time. It was just those first 3 episodes that were painful. But sadly, this season, rather than having painful episodes, they just have predictable and boring episodes. Like, I'm watching these storylines and I'm seeing these things play out, and I just don't care. I'm not invested in these characters, their world, their story. I just don't care this time around. And it's not like I've lost interest in the characters, as I'm still very curious to see what kind of stuff they go through, especially if there was the 3rd season, which I wouldn't be against watching. But honestly, season 2 just doesn't leave an impact on me. I feel like it's just there. It doesn't feel like it's trying to tell a really interesting story. It's just like, okay, here's character, here's plot point, character development. And it's just like, I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to make it so that way the characters can actually develop into better characters of themselves. But at the same time, the way they execute it, I just find myself just bored of it. But I don't really have much else to say that can really go into non-spoiler stuff, so we're just gonna hop into the spoiler section now. Here's a timestamp to when the spoilers end. If you have seen the show, I'd recommend sticking around and hear my thoughts, but if you haven't, just skip to the end so you don't get any spoilers. But again, if you have seen it, I recommend sticking around and hear my thoughts, so maybe you can agree or disagree in the comments. But yeah, I'm gonna count up from 5 and I'm gonna enter the spoiler section. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so going back to what I was saying before, predictability. One of the biggest issues that the start of the season suffered from was how clear some of the storylines that we're going for were, and how I just didn't want to care about them at all. And the first one was the story about a woman who comes to Annette and says she's her real mother and that she misses her and wants to spend time with her. And the minute she came on screen at the end of the first episode and hugged Annette and was like, oh man, she's my daughter, I thought I lost her, my immediate first thought was, oh, she's evil. She's clearly evil. She's gonna betray them. Something's gonna happen. Either she is her real mother, but she's evil, or she's not her real mother, and she's still evil. She's most definitely evil. It's very low that she's not evil. It's very unlikely. There's a very low chance. And What do I know? I was dragged on for 3 episodes trying to play it off like, oh no, she's actually a good person, but no. Then the third to final episode is just like, yeah, no, she is actually evil. I just sit there thinking, what did I say? What did I say? This dragged on for so long. I didn't care. It dragged on, and I just didn't like the fact that it was so painfully obvious from the get-go what they were going to do that I just couldn't get into what was happening in that whole story arc, and I just found myself bored and really just wanted to dip. I wanted to leave. I was almost ready to just stop the season there, but I pushed forward, and I can't really say it was that much better after that, since after that predictable storyline, which, as I mentioned, super obvious, so it kind of was boring to watch everything play out, even though it was painfully obvious where it was going to go. I didn't mind the ending of it, which was nice, where Annette reveals that she actually knew that wasn't her mother the whole time and that she was just a crazy woman, so she killed her with a bomb, which was kind of nice. Like that part of it. But the rest of the season isn't that much better. I mean, I pushed myself to get through the rest, and sadly, there isn't that much more to offer. There's like this one-off episode where the character Monica reveals that she's not a true genius. She had to go through a lot of hardships and stuff, and it was only after she interacted with our group that she was managing to melt her icy heart, and she's able to be a full-fledged spy now. And it was a fine episode, but I wouldn't say it was particularly special or unique. There wasn't anything about it that really made me think this was worth my time. But then there were some kind of fun episodes, like one where the character Sarah was confessed to by a guy who said that he fell in love with her on first sight, even though it was like a trick he was using to try to get her money, and the other spies figured it out, which honestly, I enjoyed that episode. I thought it was fun. I thought it was a very interesting episode. But then there's just some other episodes, like the next storyline we follow, where the character of Tia is trying to adapt to her role in the group, and how sometimes she's not too sure about where she sits in the group, as she knows what she's good at, but Monica keeps asking her about where her place is on the team if all she could do is seduction. And I didn't hate that storyline, but the only time I really think her true abilities really shined was in the second to final episode of this season, where she learned what her role to play in the whole mission was. And that was actually a pretty fun episode with some really nice twists in there, such as one of the main bad guys turning to the hero side thanks to her. And I thought that was a nice little twist, a few cool things here and there that I really thought was going to be played off as a betrayal, and it was actually this and that. And by betrayal, I mean that he was going to convince her to break free, but she broke him free, and he tried to knock her out, but then she managed to convince him to join their side, which was a nice change. I did not expect that. But overall, I just felt like most of the storylines this season were kind of lacking. I think that's just due to the fact of what I really expected from Spy Classroom. You see, when I hear the description of Spy Classroom, I think I might have mentioned this in my first season review, but I don't know if I did. I was kind of expecting something similar to Assassination Classroom, where we follow these girls trying to find ways to capture their teacher, Klaus, off guard, and that would have been a fun series to watch. But no, instead we get a bunch of spy missions, which sometimes are fun, but they're very rare cases, as out of all the spy missions I've watched, the only one that I really found myself kind of getting into and really being invested in was the one that happened in season 1, because I still enjoyed it and had a lot of fun. But with season 2's main plot lines, even the second one, which I do think is a lot better than the first, as out of that storyline there's actually 2 episodes in there that I really enjoyed, I just really didn't like this season. I found it was kind of bland overall, and every single time I was watching an episode that didn't keep me even slightly interested, I just watched it and thought, wow, okay, moving on. Like, there's just many times where I'm watching and I don't really want to watch, and it just made me kind of glad that when I finally reached the final episode, I was just relieved that I was done. I was glad I finished, and I'm glad that it was over. And while I'm not opposed to watching a season 3, I wouldn't say I'd immediately hop on the bandwagon of watching it. I might watch it, is more of what I would say. I don't know if I would 100% watch it, but I wouldn't be against watching it. It's just season 2 really kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth compared to season 1, since there are so many times where I'm watching and I just do not care. I don't care about what's happening on screen, and I just want to move on and just keep things moving. And it's just really sad to me that the filler episodes, the episodes that have no meaning to them, except maybe minor details here and there, are somehow more entertaining than the actual storylines that we follow. And I don't know if that says something on the show's part or my part about what I personally enjoy. It's just, I didn't really get invested in the spy missions almost at all. It's just, the whole season overall just isn't as good as season 1. Season 1, while it does have that really, really rough start with the first 3 episodes not being the best, the rest of the season was fun. I enjoyed it. I had a good time. But with season 2, I just didn't care. I just wasn't invested. And it's not really helped by the fact that sometimes characters just don't really appear too much. Like, out of all the characters, definitely one of my top favorites in this show is Klaus. However, he only really shows up these days to kind of just say, magnificent, or just something like that, and doesn't really do too much else in terms of spy missions. He does something cool at the end, like in the second to final episode, but in most cases, he just kind of dips from the picture, and we only focus on the girls' stories and other stuff, which I don't mind. Some of them can be interesting, as I mentioned before. The final storyline, like main storyline in season 1, was fun. Even though Klaus was barely in it, in fact, it was just him in disguise. Or, you know, it was Gret in disguise. It's just, that was still fun. However, I just found that the lack of Klaus really in this season really kind of brought it down, since he's one of the more fun characters to watch. When you take his more serious, focused demeanor against all these girls with all these different wacky personalities, it's just a lot more fun to watch his interactions with them than their interactions with each other. It's just, for me personally. But I wouldn't say that every episode is bad, as I mentioned before, but I definitely found myself feeling bored a lot of the time, and the fact that we're only like 4 episodes that I can think of that I really enjoyed, those being the episode where Sarah gets sent on a date and she figures out all of this with the help of the others, and the 2 episodes of the final storyline that we follow, one being where Monica wins an interesting game of darts, and the final, or second to final episode being fun with its twists and turns, and then the final episode just being a goofy episode that had a bit of an awkward conclusion, where it's built up that all of the members of the team misinterpret that Klaus is in love with them, even though he's not, because of something that Tia dropped, and it's fun. I think it was a fun storyline, but it definitely ended on a rather awkward note, at least in my opinion, as it really could have had a much more satisfying conclusion to it, but Overall, I didn't hate this season, but compared to the first one, it's really boring, and if I were to say that it's better, that'd be a lie, because I really found myself feeling bored throughout most of the season, and it just felt extremely predictable at times. Primarily the first storyline of all this, but I just wasn't that into it, and yeah. That's all I have to say. So we're at the conclusion of this video, and what are my final thoughts? Spy Classroom Season 2 is It's not great. It's not terrible, but if I were to compare it to the first season, which I actually enjoyed, it wasn't that amazing. I wouldn't say it's the worst. I wouldn't say it's like the most horrible anime I've ever watched, but it was just kind of bland. It played into a lot of cliches. It didn't really stick the landing for me. Overall, while I wouldn't be against watching a third season, I wouldn't be 100% on board with it either. I might watch it if it came out maybe like a few months after it finishes or something, but I don't know, just when it comes to Spy Classroom, I'm just not that invested in this show anymore. Season 1 was fun, but Season 2 was rather boring at times, and I just didn't enjoy it as much. And that's why I give Spy Classroom Season 2 a 5 out of 10. It had a few decent episodes here and there, but overall, it just wasn't that great, and I don't know if I'd prefer to watch it a second time, because it just wasn't that fun. But yeah, that's all I have to say, and thank you all for watching. If you're new to the JGC Anime channel, don't forget to subscribe. I also do anime fans to the channel, and I will see you all around. Peace!